Okay, class, so the next few weeks we'll be going over the American Civil War. So I just want you to get a good brief overview of what we will be learning in the next couple of weeks. We'll first be discussing the causes of the American Civil War. I just labeled down here 6 main causes that we will be discussing. You will need to know this. So the first one will be the Cotton Gin by Eli Whitney in 1793. We'll also be talking about the state rights, the economic differences between the North and the South, the whole idea of slavery being immoral and under the Constitution, did they have the right to do that? The Lincoln election, why did the South not want Lincoln to become president? And also the fact of preserving the Union. So basically, you can see all these key factors, all these key causes of the American Civil War, all evolved around the idea of slavery. Was it immorally right? Did the states have the right to do this? Was the federal government able to have power to tell what the states to do? Things like that. So this is what we'll be focused on in the beginning. What led to the Civil War? Okay. And here's just a little good picture to show you guys visually of what the boundaries look like between the North and South. So in the blue we have the Union, North, and in the red we have the Confederate South. As you can see on the left side, we do have some Union over here within Nevada, Oregon, and California. However, they didn't really play a key role. There was some skirmishes between Confederacy and the Unions over here, but other than that, this was more wild, wild west where it was really unorganized and the outpost didn't have enough men to make a big impact in the war. So the main war would be fought along the borderline states as well as inside the Union and along the Mississippi River. Okay, so let's look at the leaders of the both sides. So on the left side we have Abraham Lincoln, tall bearded man, um, man that stood against slavery. You know, he was the great emancipator, Honest Abe, however you like to look at him. He was the leader of the Union, and his number one goal was to preserve the Union. He did not want the southern states to succeed from the Union. On the other hand, we have Jefferson Davis, who was actually elected the president of the Confederacy. Okay. Now let's look at the pawns of the war. So we have the generals on the Union side. Ulysses S. Grant. He is the general in chief, basically the commander, the head honcho in regards to generals in the Union Army. He's also famous because later on he would actually serve as the 18th president. And on the right we have George McClellan, who was the former general in chief. General Grant was actually promoted while McLean was demoted as Abraham Lincoln saw fit that McLean was not doing the job in preserving the Union. And on the bottom we have famous William T. Sherman, General Sherman. This guy was old blood and guts, glory guy. He basically created the term modern total warfare. He came and conquered, destroyed everything in sight, used all of the resources, civilian resources, everything for the war effort. He was the commander of the Western Theater, and when we say Western Theater, I want you guys to think of Tennessee, you know, not California. Western Theater, they're looking more towards the Mississippi, Vicksburg, and such things like that. You know, the Texas. We're not thinking way out west. The idea of west at this moment in time is the Mississippi. Okay, the generals of the Confederacy. So right here we're looking at Robert E. Lee. He is actually probably the best general in the whole entire war. At the time of the war, President Lincoln was actually going to give the head of the Union Army command to Robert E. Lee. However, at this time, Robert E. Lee felt that he was more loyal to his state than the actual country, the Union. So he actually sided with the Confederacy due to the fact that Virginia broke off to join the Confederacy. So that's the reason why he was a Confederate, not because of his beliefs in slavery or anything political, but he had the loyalty to stay with his state. And on the right, we have Thomas J. Jackson, also known as Stonewall Jackson. This man is the true hero of the South, everybody says. Basically, in the first battle at Bull Run, as the Confederacy, some of the Confederacy retreated, people say they saw Stonewall Jackson stand there stone cold like a wall. He did not move. His men did not move an inch back. They stayed and they fought and they won. He's the true hero of the South. And on the bottom, I just wanted to add another third person, but George Pickett, also famous for the Pickett's Charge during Gettysburg, which ultimately was the biggest mistake of Gettysburg and cost them the costly battle at the Gettysburg. So put his name in there just because he was a big factor in the Union victory. Okay, also now battles to remember. We're gonna first, discuss, the Fort Sumter, where this was the first battle, first shots fired, um, and this was a battle behind enemy lines, basically a Union fort in the South, which was not very fortified, and they were just severely outnumbered, and the fort was taken by the Confederacy easily. And then the Battle of Bull Run, which is the first major battle of the Civil War, where both sides were both inexperienced. Um, Nobody was battle hard ready, and people came out there with picnic baskets to watch the battle. They thought this was going to be a one-day thing, and it turned out to be a bloodbath. With thousands of people dead on both sides. But this was actually a Confederate win. Battle of Shiloh is another key one to note. It's another key victory for the Union soldiers. And we also have the battle on Antietam. Battle at Antietam and Shiloh are big battles that we will discuss of Union victories that later on would build up into the ultimate Union victory. And then lastly, we have the Campaign of Vicksburg and Gettysburg. Campaign of Vicksburg for Vicksburg was actually a battle um, that ended the war, but also, people debate whether Gettysburg was the battle that ended the war. But this, but it's key to note that Vicksburg actually took place the day after. Well, it was a long couple of days, but it ended day after Gettysburg. So both are key to know that both were Union victories and both pretty much ended the war. Vicksburg basically split the South at the Mississippi, and Gettysburg drove Robert E. Lee out of the North and ultimately dealt a punishing blow to the Confederate forces. And the new technology that developed over the war. So the new technology we saw was the Gatling gun over here on the top left, and that just created a even bloodier war with the amount of bullets per second it was able to fire. And on the bottom left we have the ironclads. This is a big time. You see the Navy with heavy fortified walls. We see quite a few battles, but this was a whole new technology that at the time that presented itself. Also, a new strategy was the strategy of information, and these are done with observation balloons. What they would do is both sides will send up balloons over the battlefield, maybe a mile away, and basically they will draw pictures of the battlefield, who's winning, try to see the lines, And this was a very dangerous job just because one bullet into the hole, the guy's coming down, and there's no parachutes at this time of age. So, and the top right, we have what is known as the telegraph, which created immediate communication through the front lines, through the headquarters. So this allowed for, commanders to basically be in charge from a safe distance, but it also allowed for news in the war to get to major cities. So this was a great mass communication development. And one more we have is the railroad system. So the railroad system was in place long before the Civil War, but this system at this time was a big part of the Civil War. The way it mass transported troops in different locations, weapons, and it just saw a key value to both sides, where both sides were sabotaging each other's railroad system. And there's one more. I don't have a picture of it right now, but all these pictures are photographers that were, photography that was taken during the time. And this is where you see a lot of photography come out, and you see a lot of photos come out of death battles and technology, as you see, and portraits of famous generals, as we saw earlier of President Lincoln and all the other generals. So photography was another good technology that actually came from this era. And that will conclude the overview of this next lesson that we will be discussing, and that is the American Civil War.